Hello and welcome. We are here today with John Notgrass, and he is from the publishing company, Notgrass Publishing, and he is here to talk to us about history. So I hope you enjoy this little session, and he's going to go ahead and take it away, and we'll ask him some questions at the end, but we are so grateful that you're willing to be here with us today.
Thank you, Jessica. It's great to be here. I love talking to parents about history and education, so this is wonderful for me. I want to start out by telling a story about Hidenari Terasaki and Gwen Harold. Mr. Terasaki was born in Japan in 1900. He grew up and became a diplomat working for the Japanese government in different places around the world, and he was stationed in Washington, D.C. Miss Gwen Harold was born in Tennessee in 1906, and she was visiting an aunt in Washington and met Mr. Terasaki at an embassy reception in 1930. They were married in 1931, and they spent the next decade traveling around to different diplomatic posts in Japan, China, Cuba, and the United States. And their daughter Mariko was born in 1932 in Shanghai, China. Terry, which is what Gwen called her husband, Mr. Terasaki, Terry really wanted Japan and the United States to be friends. Of course, his wife was from the United States, and so he had a connection there. But just from an international perspective, he felt like the United States and Japan had a lot in common, and they should be friends. They shouldn't go to war with each other. So even as Japan was preparing to attack the United States, he was working behind the scenes to try to bring about peace and trying to arrange communication between the emperor and President Roosevelt so that they could talk through whatever differences there were. And if certain military authorities had found out what he was doing, he could have been arrested and perhaps executed for working against, the official government policy. But he was so strongly devoted to that he was willing to sacrifice his life even for that cause. When Japan did attack the United States, the Terasaki family and other German and Japanese diplomats were interned for a few months in the United States, and then they were sent away in exchange for American ambassadors from Europe and Asia. And then Terry and Gwen and Mariko went to Japan, and they lived throughout World War II, and they endured severe hunger and cold and mental strain, and the expectation of American bombing coming on their country and the expected American invasion. Finally, peace came, Japan surrendered, and the Americans started arriving, and Mr. Terasaki was appointed as a liaison and interpreter to work with the Emperor Hirohito and General Douglas MacArthur to try to communicate and negotiate things for the American occupation. But sadly, he never fully recovered from the strain and the stuff he suffered during the war, and he died a few years later in 1951. And Gwen and Mariko moved back to the United States, and Gwen published her story, her memoir, a book called Bridge to the Sun in 1957. And I stumbled across this book at a little Tennessee library and found a first edition that had been signed by Gwen Terasaki. And I'd never heard of it. It just looked interesting, and I picked it up and was blown away by the amazing, beautiful, heartbreaking story. And Gwen lived until 1990. She was 84 years old. And then their daughter, Mariko, became an international advocate for peace and goodwill. She had seen and experienced firsthand the devastation caused by war. And so she wanted to work to help bring countries, specifically Japan and the United States, together, but also promoting peace and an anti-war message. That's how she devoted her life. And so to me, when I hear this story, World War II could never be boring because it affected so many people so dramatically and had a profound effect on our world. It's not just a list of names and dates. It's about real people who experienced real things. And sometimes we try to make history too simple and pretend like there are good guys and bad guys, and it's very clear. But here's a case where a man from Japan was working hard for peace. He didn't want his country to go to war, and he was working against it. So history is very complicated, and people have different motivations and desires and goals. But when you boil it all down, we're really all basically the same, because we all want to take care of our families. We want to, do our work and earn our daily bread and help our communities and our countries. And so that's what history is about. For thousands of years, people like Terry have been doing that, and Gwen and Mariko. And then I have a special personal connection to World War II because my father's father was in the U.S. Army in Europe, and he took dozens of photographs while he was there, and he brought back memorabilia and showed that to me and told me stories about his experiences. So again, history is about real life and how we understand what happened in the past and think about how that applies to our lives today. So I want to share just some ideas about how you can make history interesting. So for me, history is not boring. History is exciting, but you can teach history in a boring way. And so that's what I think a lot of people have experienced. They have, because of what they went through in school or just the experiences they had, they got the impression that learning about history was boring. But history, as I've said, is really about real people and the real things they did. So here's a picture of the book I was talking about, Bridge to the Sun. And this book has been kept in print by Gwen's grandson, Mariko's, actually it's Gwen's great-grandson, Mariko's grandson, Cole, cherishes and honors his family story, and he wants to keep the book in print so it's available. And so we are able to order the book through him to share with other families through our business. And then on the right, you can see an example of a piece of Japanese artwork. So the United States and Japan had established diplomatic and trade relations in the 1850s and 1860s. And this is a piece of artwork drawn by a Japanese illustrator showing an American ship which had come to Japan. And again, so artwork is a fascinating way to learn about history because we see, it's drawn in a Japanese style, but it reflects an American ship, and you can see the Stars and Stripes flag hanging off the ship. So learning about the ways the different cultures have interacted and the way they've influenced each other is fascinating. I love board games, and another fascinating way to learn about history is to see the games that people have played in the past, games and sports, the way people entertain themselves. So on the left is an example. This was discovered in a Sumerian tomb, so it's several thousand years old, and it's known as the royal game of Ur. And people have tried to figure out the rules. We're not entirely clear, but scholars have worked on that, and it's kind of similar to Parcheesi. You move your pieces around the board, trying to get off the board before your opponents, and capture your opponent's pieces. And so there's actually an online version of this game that you can play with the modern rules, and you can play against a friend or play against the computer. And again, it's fascinating to think that you're playing a game that people thousands of years were enjoying. And then on the right is another example. This is an illustration of a game from Central America that the Spanish encountered when they met the people, the Aztecs and other groups in Central America. And again, it's a similar board with the pieces that you move around. But again, that's just another way you can connect with history is by looking at the games that people played. Here's another example of artwork. Sometimes in history, we learn about things that we can't really experience today. And one of those is the dodo bird, which was lived on the island of Mauritius. And all of them were hunted and killed. And so that bird became extinct. And so we don't have any dodo birds now, but we do have artwork that shows people who actually saw them and experienced them hundreds of years ago. And there was an emperor, Jahangir of the Mughal Empire in northern India, and he had his own personal zoo. So he had a lot of animals and birds that people had collected and brought, and including 2 dodo birds that someone had brought from the island of Mauritius. And he had a court artist named Ustad Mansour, and about 1625, that artist painted this picture showing some of the birds in the emperor's collection. And so this is considered one of the best portraits of a live dodo bird that has survived. And again, so this was from northern India in the 17th century. I also love maps, and looking at historic maps tells us a lot about what people knew or what people thought they knew. Sometimes maps were not really accurate because people were speculating about areas that they didn't really know much about. But then as people explored more and shared information, they were able to draw more accurate maps. So this map was drawn in 1820 by an English diplomat who lived in Singapore. And so it reflects British interests in Southeast Asia. You can see Indonesia and northern part of Australia there. So again, maps reflect what was important to the people who drew the maps. In this case, the governor, or, this diplomat who was in Singapore wanted to understand the trade routes, and the other, the international players who were also trying to form colonies in Southeast Asia. So that is reflected on this map. And then photography is fascinating. Photography is a relatively new invention. With cell phones today, we we can take pictures all the time, and we have hundreds or thousands of pictures on our cell phones. But back in 1838, when this photograph was taken, this was new technology. And so this is taken in Paris, and the exposure took about 10 minutes. So, there were carriages and people walking on the street that you can't see because the exposure took too long. But if you look down in the lower left corner, you can see a man shining the shoes of someone else. They were standing relatively still while the picture was being taken, and you can see that little detail there, standing on the street corner. So again, before the advent of photography, we have paintings like those that we looked at before, but then photography gives us a new way to learn about the past, to see things that we can no longer see because buildings have been torn down and other technology and architecture has taken their place, and so photographs give us a snapshot of what things used to look like. Money is also a fascinating way to look at the past, and all of these examples are examples of primary sources. And so primary sources are things from the past that show us what life was like. It's either letters, diaries, speeches. So it's physical written things that people put down, but it's also things that they used in daily life, whether that's toys or coins in this case. And so these are some examples of gold coins from Egypt, Hungary, Holland, and Iraq. And it's interesting, when archaeologists discover coins, they often find coins in one place that come from another place. And so that shows the trade routes that people had. And so there are coins all over Europe and Asia and Africa, from hundreds or thousands of miles away, showing that people were connected. Even before cell phones and airplanes, people found ways to connect with each other and share information and share goods and share ideas. I also love music, and so here's an example of many of the Cherokee people became Christians in the 18th and 19th century, and they translated hymns from English into their own language, the Cherokee language, and they published a Cherokee hymn book. And so this is an example of the song Amazing Grace, which was translated into Cherokee. And one of the many tragic things about the Trail of Tears is that as the Cherokee people were forced to leave their homes in Georgia and Tennessee, they would sing hymns. The people from, white Caucasian Americans were forcing them to leave their homes, and yet many of the Cherokee were singing Christian hymns to support them and encourage themselves while they were going on that terrible journey when thousands of them died because of the terrible conditions they had to suffer. Dances and singing games have also been an important part of culture around the world. And so when you learn singing games that people in the past have done and traditional dances, that's another way to connect with entertainment and also the way people spent their time. They couldn't watch TV in the evening, so they would dance and have fun doing singing games with each other. Literature is a wonderful way to learn about the past. Stories, whether they are true stories like Gwen Terasaki's story about her life in Japan during World War II, or historical novels, they can help give us a glimpse of different cultures, different time periods, and putting them in a story format really helps us identify with the characters and learn points about what life was like in different times. So here are just a few examples of literature for younger students that our family has enjoyed. Benjamin West and His Cat Grimalkin is a novel based on a real person, Benjamin West, who was an artist in 18th century United States. And so it's a story about him becoming an artist, learning to explore that aspect and that skill that he had. The Cabin Faced West, Jean Fritz wrote this based on a little anecdote about one of her ancestors who lived in Pennsylvania at a time that George Washington came to visit their farm. Soft Rain is about the Trail of Tears that I mentioned before, about a Cherokee girl and her family being forced to leave their home in the eastern United States and move to Oklahoma. Freedom Crossing is a great story about the Underground Railroad. It's about a girl in New York who has to wrestle with feelings about whether it's okay to break the law by helping runaway slaves in order to accomplish something more important. And so it's a good story that analyzes that difficult question about, is it okay to do something that's legally wrong, but it's trying to help someone do something right. So It's a really good story. And then The Year of Miss Agnes is a fascinating book about a teacher in Alaska who works with students from Native Alaskan communities. It's just an interesting glimpse into that culture also. Then for older, upper elementary, junior high, here are some other books that we have enjoyed. The Golden Goblet is set in ancient Egypt. A Single Shard is a great story set in medieval Korea about a boy who wants to learn how to be a potter. Growing Up Dakota was written by a Lakota Sioux man uh, about his experiences growing up in the mid-19th century. And he published those, and then we republished some of his stories as a book called Growing Up Dakota. Again, giving insight into his experience growing up on the plains of the United States. Misty of Chincoteague is about children in Virginia. There are wild horses on islands off the coast of Virginia and Maryland, and there's an annual event where they capture some of the wild horses and use them to help raise money for the fire department there. And so that's a fun story about that. Just it's a unique way of life. People who live on the little islands off the coast, off the East Coast. And then Katie is a story that my sister Mary Evelyn wrote about. It's based on things that our family experienced when we started to homeschool back in the 1990s, and just some of the experiences we had and some of the things our parents went through as they were thinking about how to approach our education at that time. And then for older students, high school, just some of the books that we enjoy and recommend are Uncle Tom's Cabin, which was loosely based on the life of a real man who escaped slavery and moved to Canada. And Harriet Beecher Stowe heard about his story and used that as the core, the seed for some of her ideas that she put into her novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin. Mama's Bank Account is about a Norwegian family in San Francisco in the early 1900s, and it's a novel, but Catherine Forbes, the author, was the descendant of Norwegian immigrants. So again, it reflects some of their ideas and their cultural experiences. Cry, the Beloved Country is a powerful novel set in South Africa during the time of apartheid, and it's about crime and punishment and how people can learn how to get along with each other, even when they've been at odds for a long time. It's a very powerful story. Revolution is Not a Dinner Party was written by a woman from China about her experience, her family's experience during the Cultural Revolution when the Communist Party in China tried to suppress traditional culture and art and ways of life, and about their experience during that difficult time. And then Blood Brothers is written by a Palestinian man who is also a Christian about his work trying to encourage Jews and Palestinians in Israel and the Middle East to get to know each other and to work for peace, even though they have differences. So again, all these are examples of literature that give you insight on culture that is different from yours, different from mine. And when we're willing to really listen and understand to people's stories that are different from ours, that it helps us get a new perspective on our own way of life, but then it also helps us understand and appreciate why other people think the way they do, and just learn more about their background and the influences on them. And we get to know them better. And so whether that's people who are living today or people who have lived in the past, it gives us glimpses into things that are just outside our normal realm of experience. One of the wonderful things about history is that whatever your kids are interested in, there's a way to tie that to history. So if your child is interested in sports, you can study about the history of sports. Or if your child is interested in fashion, you can learn about the history of fashion. If your child likes cooking and baking and food, of course, there are many ways to connect with that, with different cultures and different historical civilizations and what they ate. If it's architecture, transportation, technology, whatever your child is interested in, there's a way to connect that to history. And sometimes there are kids who struggle to really connect with history. And I think it's great for parents to really take a step back and think about what their child is interested in and try to use that as a way to get them in to see that history really is exciting, because it's about the things that we do today, whether it's entertainment or eating or clothing. As I said, just all those things have a connection to history. And you can use that as a way to, kind of as a way to sneak your children into getting excited about history by connecting it with something that they're already interested in. Field trips are another great way to explore history. Our family over the years has spent made several trips visiting a lot of the Laura Ingalls Wilder sites around the country. And we've been able to do that with 4 generations of our family. My mom's mom was able to go on one of those trips with my parents, and then so my mom's mom, and then my parents, and then my siblings and me, and then some of our children, my parents' grandchildren, have all been able to visit different sites, and that's been a fun part of our family experience, getting to connect with those different places. And we're also working on compiling a database of historical field trips around the U.S., and there are a lot in Arizona that we focused on. Of course, there are many indigenous museums and other cultural sites in Arizona that are great for learning about those different cultures. The Arizona State Museum in Tucson has a lot of displays and exhibits. Again, here's an example of one of the Native Nations, the White Mountain Apache tribe, has their own museum and website. There's the Tubac Presidio State Historic Park south of Tucson. And again, there's a lot of, you can see how the different cultures intersected with Japanese, I'm sorry, not Japanese, that was what I was talking about before, Spanish and indigenous peoples. And then, even there was Russian influence in California. And so the Spanish and the Russians had some connections in what became the Western United States. And then, the Spanish, Mexico gained its independence and had ongoing interaction with the United States. So all of that is fascinating to learn about, and there's lots of that in Arizona to see. The Pima Air and Space Museum, for kids who are interested in military history, has a lot of exhibits and actual aircraft to explore. And this one looks fascinating. I haven't gotten to go here, but there's a musical instrument museum in Phoenix that looks really cool. So there are all sorts of, again, there are ways to connect your kids with actually going to historic places where events happened, and then also museums that help provide context about what they're learning about in their history books. So these are just some examples of how you can explore history. And if you've been using a certain curriculum that doesn't seem to be working, or you're looking for resources that help you, you can take all these ideas. There are lots of websites that have lists of books that are great for kids. There are lots of places where you can go to get field trip ideas. There are places online where you can get hands-on activity ideas. And then there are lots of resources where you can find primary sources. And so there are some parents who go through all this information and they want to create their own unit study. They want to do the research and do the work. And that's amazing. That's wonderful. More power to them, for the parents who really want to do that. But if you're in a place where it feels overwhelming to try to pull all that together, there are resources like Notgrass History that can help bring all those resources together in a package that helps you focus on teaching your children, enjoying your time with them, and learning as a family. And I was talking with Jessica before about some of the resources we have available, and I want to just go through some examples, lessons of what we have to show you how that fits together. So I'm going to take a look at our Star Spangled Story, which is our elementary curriculum, which is great for any time between 1st through 4th grade. Our website has videos that walk you through the basics of how it works. And we have a short video and then a longer video that goes step by step through the curriculum. And then I will pull up a PDF example to walk through layout. All of our curriculum is written so you get the lesson book and you don't need a separate teacher's guide, because all of the instructions are included right in the lessons. At the beginning of the book of each curriculum, there's a guide to the parent and some information for the student about what you're going to be studying and how to approach it. But then day by day, you go through the lessons and you read the lesson, and at the end of the lesson are the specific assignments for that day. So for example, here, you read through this first lesson, and then there are maps that go along with it. There are what we call Rhythms and Rhymes book, which is poetry. In this case, you read a song from a Native Nation called the Coyote Song. There are optional student workbooks that you can do, and then there's literature that we recommend. Then there's some short review questions and some hands-on history ideas. such as, in this lesson, we talk about how the Vikings explorers came to North America. So we suggest building a Viking ship out of blocks. Again, there are different types of examples, different types of activities for each day, but we just give you some simple ideas where kids who like to build things and do things hands-on can do something to connect with what they're studying. So that's one lesson. And then the next lesson, again, you go through, you're learning about the Acoma Pueblo in New Mexico and some of the other native nations from that area of the Southwest. Then you get into Columbus and Cabot and Coronado and other European explorers coming to the US, to North America. And so our Star Spangled Story has 3 lessons like that per week and broken up into 30 weekly units. So if you do 3 lessons a week, you can finish the curriculum over the course of 1 school year. And then once a week, we have a bigger hands-on project. In this case, some instructions on how to create your own pottery modeled after the Puebloan pottery that you learned about in one of the lessons that week. So we give the instructions on how to mix that together using flour and salt, and then bake it in the oven to let it dry. And again, there's the literature that goes along with that. So again, our goal, we believe that history is exciting and that kids can really connect with it. And so, the examples that I've been talking about earlier of the primary sources, the literature, the hands-on activities, all of that is tied into the way we lay out our curriculum, the way we guide you through it. But it's all in one package, so it's easy for the parent to know what to follow. You don't have to go hunting for a lot of other resources on the internet because we provide it as a package, so it's very easy for you to use. I'm going to look at one of our middle school courses. So again, that's what we recommend for 1st through 4th grade. We also have a U.S. geography course called Our 50 States for that same age range. And then I'm going to look at one of our middle school courses called From Adam to Us about world history. So Notgrass History, all of our curriculum is written from a Christian perspective, which has a biblical foundation. It has some Bible study that goes along with it. We look at other world religions and other cultures, and we want to teach respect for them and love for everyone, regardless of their religious or philosophical background. But it is written from a Christian perspective. That's the approach we take in our curriculum. So our From Adam to Us goes through all of world history from creation to the present in 1 year. There are some other approaches to teaching world history that take a 4-year cycle approach, where year 1 is ancient history, and then year 2 is maybe the Renaissance and Reformation, and year 3 is more like 16, 17, 1800s, and then year 4 is more modern history. And that's a great way to do it. We decided to take the approach of going through all of world history in 1 year to really help the kids get a big picture overview of lots of different cultures, what was going on in lots of different places, and see how that connects together by focusing on all of that in 1 year. So of course, we can't cover everything. You can't cover everything in world history, even if you take 4 years. But since we did it in 1 year, we do have to pick and choose some of the resources that we do, some of the topics that we cover. We do have a high school world history course, and we're working on an elementary world history course that will cover, focus on some different things, as if you chose to use Notgrass History throughout your educational journey. But again, here are some examples of the lessons from Adam to Us. At the beginning of the unit, we show a world map, and these little push pins show you the locations that you're going to be learning about as you go through this unit. So in this case, you're looking at Europe and Africa. So the lesson about Mansa Musa of the Mali Empire. So we have maps, historic photographs and illustrations, and then modern photographs and illustrations showing these same regions of the world and what it looks like today. Have some examples of Ethiopian Christian artifacts, and talk about the Muslim religion and its influence in West Africa. And then at the end of the lesson, you have a reading from Our Creative World, which is the collection of primary sources that goes along with this curriculum. There's a map book, a timeline book, an optional student workbook and lesson review, a thinking biblically activity, and then a literature assignment. And then once a week, as in elementary, once a week, there's a larger hands-on project, a family activity that everybody can be involved in. The next lesson looks at the 100 Years' War in Europe. And again, so we have a theme for each lesson, and then we show the child how other things going on in the world at that time are connected to that main event that we're talking about. So in this case, they learn about the Black Plague. They also learn about Joan of Arc. So again, we tie in topics that they may have heard a little bit about in the past, and we help them see how that connects to the bigger picture of what was going on during that time. We chose some interesting geographical landmarks. Some of them, people may not be familiar with. So, some of the topics we talk about are more well-known, and then some of the others are less well-known. And again, we think digging into some of the lesser well-known topics from history, again, it can be intriguing, and it also just helps you learn more about different topics. In this case, we look at a salt mine from Central Europe. And again, salt is a very important commodity in international trade. It's used in food for preserving things and seasoning things. And so it's interesting to learn about a salt mine and how that played a role in the geography and history of this region. We help the kids learn about plants and animals and bodies of water and other geographic features connected to what they're studying. And again, we tie it into the history of that time period. A lesson about Lubeck and the Hanseatic League, which was a network of cities across Europe that was a trading network and played a significant role during this time period. And then the fifth lesson looks at some of the changes that were going on in church and government during this time period, such as the Magna Carta, with people in England talking about political freedoms and liberties, and then people in Europe also talking about religious freedom and liberty. So again, that's an example from Adam to Us. So again, these are examples of how we lay out our curriculum, so it's easy to know what to do each day. So for the elementary, you do 3 or 4 lessons a week. Our 50 states is 4 lessons a week. For our middle school and high school, it's 5 lessons a week. So it's designed to do Monday through Friday for 30 weeks. We do give you some flexibility. If you have a 180-day school year, you have a maximum of 150 lessons. So if you need to take a week off for a vacation or going to visit grandparents, whatever it is, you can do that and still you're able to finish the curriculum. You don't have to do it every single school day in order to complete it in 1 year. So Jessica, that's my overview. Do you have any other questions that I can explain anything better?
Thank you so much. I was really edified personally because all of those pieces are things that I look for in a curriculum. So I really appreciate, and I actually learned some historical information I did not know before. Okay, so a couple of just quick questions. They might seem obvious to maybe you or I, but I think these are some good questions to throw out there. Can you combine grade levels when going through some of these different books?
Sure. We don't assign a specific grade, like, we don't say you have to use this book in 2nd grade. So we design it with an age range because we know a lot of families love to combine resources. And, I've used our elementary curriculum with my kids who are 2 years apart. So like 1st through 4th grade. So like if you have a 4th grader, a 2nd grader, and even a kindergartner, all 3 of them could certainly go through the same course together. And the kindergartner, you don't need really high expectations of what they're going to accomplish. They're just along for the ride, and they can listen to the lessons, listen to the literature, listen to the music, and do the dances. So they can be involved as much or as little as you want. And then, like if you did have a kindergartner go through it, you could use it again with that child in 3rd or 4th grade, and they could go through it at a deeper level and do more of the activities. So that's one way to approach it. When it gets a little trickier if like you have a 3rd, 5th, and 7th grader, for example. We have heard from a lot of families who decide to use one of our middle school courses and include a 5th grader or even a 3rd grader. Again, you wouldn't expect them to be able to complete all the activities at the same level as their older sibling. But, going through the material, and then, like I said, they could go through it again in 3 or 4 years when they're ready to do it, to do more of the activities and do it at a deeper level. So we don't want our curriculum to be a burden for anyone. We want it to be a tool that helps parents accomplish their goals. So if it's easiest for the parent to combine a 3rd, 5th, and 7th grader and use one of our middle school courses, we totally support that. You don't feel like you have to do 2 separate courses because everybody can still benefit, even if it's not exactly at their age level. Because one of the benefits of homeschooling is that the older children can encourage and support the younger siblings and the younger siblings sometimes can bring extra fun and excitement to the study. So
Yeah.
combining ages is a wonderful way to do it.
Yeah, I feel like it's a fun thing to do. History is fun to do as a family. That's what I found, at least.
Yes.
I was shocked even when I did some historical studies and I had a pre-K kiddo and didn't think they paid any attention. And lo and behold, in the car, they're retelling this information that I didn't even realize that they were listening to, and it sunk in. So I think that can be a really fun thing to do as a family. So one thing that you didn't touch on, and I don't want to force your hand in showing this, but I love how you use a ton of primary sources. If I remember, there was also some extra even links that you could go to and look at on your website. And I don't know if you would have a second just to show that to parents. I thought that was really an interesting and nice resource to have, instead of spending lots and lots of time on my end researching or adding certain things, being able to, yeah, there it is.
Yes. So over the years, we've had people ask us, do you have any video recommendations, or do you have suggestions for other literature or field trip ideas? So this, we're slowly building this database. We still have some gaps in it, but we do have thousands of resources that we found. A lot of them we have personally reviewed and we recommend. Some of them have been recommended to us by other people, so we may not have personally read every page or watched every second of the video. And we make a distinction on there, which ones are our top picks. But for example, our 50 states, so you're studying that, then we have a line matching each lesson in the curriculum. And then if you click on that lesson, so after you've done lesson 7 about Massachusetts, you can come here. We have a video about the boats in Boston that we talked about in the lesson. We have a link to the Cape Cod National Seashore website, which is a national park. It's a part of the National Park Service. I thought this was kind of fun too. We have an example of, for every state, showing how their license plates have changed over the years. So again, some of these are just short, fun videos. We're working on adding some games too. Like here's a puzzle that you can do. So this is the map of Massachusetts that's in the book. And here's a little puzzle that you can do to learn about the Massachusetts state flag and the shape of Massachusetts.
Thank you. I'm going to bring a whole bunch, okay? So you can keep them with you.
And then if you want to dig deeper, you can click on the Massachusetts link and it'll take you to more resources that we found about Massachusetts. Again, historic sites, people from Massachusetts, and then just some more information.
Yeah, that's a really neat resource. That's fun and exciting if you want to do extra things. It sounds like it would be really fun for co-op as well. I have one or two last quick questions, and really excited to post this because I think parents are going to enjoy this a lot. But with the high school level, some questions that parents wonder is about credits. Can you count a high school, one of the books, as a high school history credit?
Sure. Yeah, we designed all of our courses to provide multiple high school credits. So our world history, American history, and world geography all provide 3 high school credits if you do the whole course the way we have it laid out. Okay. So for example, the Exploring America provides 1 year of American history, 1 year of English, which involves literature and composition assignments. So it doesn't include grammar, but it's literature and composition. So we feel like that provides a high school English credit. And then it has a year of Bible related to religious history of the United States. The student reads portions of the Bible and does Bible studies. And then they're also reading sermons and hymns from American history. So all of that combines together to provide the Bible credit. And the same with the world history and world geography. It's a year of history or geography, a year of English, and a year of Bible. And then our government economics courses, the government provides a half year of government, the economics provides a half year of economics, and then there is an optional literature component too that you can use if your child needs more English credit. You can use that as an optional add-on for the government economics. And we did design those so that if you already have another English curriculum, you don't have to do the English part of our curriculum. So you can mix and match if you want to. But if you want everything tied together, we do have that. My dad Ray got the idea for that when he was in high school. He had an English teacher and a history teacher who worked together to coordinate what they were studying. And so that inspired him when he decided to start writing homeschool curriculum. He looked back at his experience and felt that that was a great way to help kids make connections between history and literature.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's very nice to have that integrated learning. I think it makes the learning richer at the end of the day. Super great information. Great to know that about the high school level as the kiddos in the program start to age up and look into different curriculum. I did just want to note at the end of this for parents that are watching that if you are a recipient of the ESA scholarship, any curriculum is considered acceptable. Like you can use any of your ESA funds to buy curriculum. It could be religious or non-religious. So that's a wonderful gift that we have here in the state of Arizona. If you are able to get that empowerment scholarship account, you can use your funds for curriculum. So that is it's a wonderful opportunity to be able to get curriculum and learn different things. Well, thank you so much for sharing today. You pretty much hit all the questions in your presentations that I had before. Those are the only ones that you didn't exactly cover. So you were very thorough. I really appreciate the primary sources. I think when I took history growing up and in college, that's what changed the game for me personally. When I read firsthand accounts of Civil War soldiers on both sides, our professor had us actually read letters that soldiers had sent back and forth. And it just, it was so exciting to be like, oh, someone actually penned this. This is someone that was fighting in that war. So I really appreciate the effort that you guys put that into the curriculum. It seems like at every level. That you guys incorporated that. So great option. I hope if you guys have any people watching have any questions, you can always contact us. I'm sure you don't mind people reaching out to you on your website. I think you have a chat that they can get a hold of you. So we appreciate it so much that you would be willing to come out and share with us a little bit about history. So I love the subject. So I don't need to get I'm preaching, you're preaching to the choir here, but I hope other parents that are watching this are inspired to don't leave history out. It's fun. Any final words, Mr. Notgrass?
No, Jessica, this has been great. Thank you for the opportunity. We are here to serve homeschooling families. Even if you choose not to use Notgrass History, we'd love to just encourage you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We want to help you find the resources that help you reach your goals. So thank you, Jessica, for what your organization is doing to connect parents with resources that are available. So keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. All right.
Take care. Bye.